Hey everyone, Sky here to discuss Split, starring James McAvoy, Anya Taylor-Joy, Betty Buckley, Haley Lou Richardson, and Jessica Sula, and directed by M. Night Shyamalan. One more week till we get to Glass, and I remember going into this theater thinking, the visit burned me so badly, why would I go see this? And then I saw the reviews come in a little earlier, and they turned out to be a little positive, so I gave it a look at, and what do I think of it then versus now? Well, I remember back then, I really enjoyed it, but let's see about now. Let's get into this. The movie opens with Casey Cook, played by Anya Taylor-Joy from these movies. And in an upcoming X-Men movie that I'm going to be reviewing later this year called... And I do like the actress, but honestly, her face kind of freaks me out. No offense to you, Anya Taylor-Joy. I like you as an actress, but you kind of have a freaky face. But her character Casey hangs with friends at Claire Benoit's birthday party, and Claire, played by Haley Lou Richardson, Casey and Marcia, played by Jessica Sula, get a ride home from Claire's father until we meet and... Actually, this comes off as a surprise because he gets encountered by and drugged up by what's his name? Kevin Wendell Crumb, played by James McAvoy. Yeah, that sounds right. And sprays a dangerous chemical on the girl's face. And this as an opening works so much better than what these movies did before by M. Night. Might I dare bring up all of his movies, except for maybe these two. Kevin takes Marcia to make her dance, and she pees on herself like Casey told her to, which without any change of clothes would smell like piss, excuse my French, so that may be a problem with the kidnapping, but Claire thinks of beating up Kevin with her Kwando karate class she took for 6 months. Is that big of a deal, honestly? Which the problem with doing that is you don't know what he's capable for, so Claire may be a problematic character for my opinion's sakes. The flashback with a younger Casey, her father, and her Uncle John, I feel like those scenes could have been in the editing room, in my opinion, because this movie is a little too long for an hour and 57 minutes. I'd say cut at least 10 minutes of it out, and the flashback scenes might be the reason why it's a little too long for me. Dr. Karen Fletcher, played by Betty Buckley, is a believer of what Kevin has, which is 23 split personalities, and there's a 24th coming. I'll get there at the end, and she talks with one of the Kevin split personalities named Barry, who emails Dr. Fletcher of how he doesn't sound good, and when he arrives, he feels better, and I thought, that's a pretty good split performance by James McAvoy. And I feel like he plays the character so well, or should I say, these split personality characters. I feel like he got robbed in the Oscars. I must confess that. We meet at least 5 of Kevin's split personalities, like Barry is one I already talked about with Dr. Fletcher, and there's Dennis, who's a tough bastard, excuse my French, and he was the one who almost made Marcia dance, and as she peed on him, then there's Patricia, whom we don't know as well, but she makes sandwiches for Marcia and Casey later in the film, and puts Marcia in another room, and there's Hedwig, a 9-year-old, who says some funny but random things, and he listens to his Kanye West CDs that we'll get later in the film. And I'll talk about the 5th one, like I said, when we get to the end of the movie. Casey discovers a way to get out of the room they're trapped in, and they find a way to go free on the roof, and Dennis finds their escape plan, and Claire almost gets out, and Dennis finds her rather too quickly, and traps Claire and splits her with Marcia and Casey up into 2 different rooms. and asks Marcia to remove her skirt and Casey to remove one of her shirts, because she's wearing a lot of shirts in this thing, I might add. And the scene was rather an intense scene, and I like that he splits them up because Claire was being bad, well, in that situation, and she was just annoying as a character, in my opinion. Barry emails Dr. Fletcher two different days after, or should I rephrase it, to 3 days in a row, and she knows something is up, and she gets camera help. She gets camera help by Jay, who's played by the movie's director, M. Night Shyamalan. And I like these scenes with Dr. Fletcher, and Betty Buckley, she filmed it in this movie that I already reviewed. But here she does great work as a psychiatrist in this movie. Marcia picks up a chair and hits Patricia as she makes sandwiches, which is kind of a stupid move on her, and she separates Marcia and Casey from each other, and Casey has crumbs on her jacket and asks her to take it off, and next thing you know, Casey is asleep seeing these flashbacks that I talked about earlier that needed to be cut out. It wakes up next to Hedwig and asks Casey to kiss him, which was a disturbing scene, but greatly acted by James McAvoy and Anya Taylor-Joy, and some degree Jessica Sula, even though she wasn't in that scene, except for the sandwich scene that I've just brought up. Dr. Fletcher gets Barry to change into Dennis while in a session, and I know based on this scene, he's insane. And I'm really liking how he can change from one person to the next, and it's well acted. After we see Hedwig dance to Kanye West, Casey finds a walkie-talkie, and somebody talks like they're working at a security office, and Casey calls for help, and suddenly Dennis gets somebody gets Casey, but it's not Dennis, but he'll explain some stuff that's going to happen to her in a few hours, as she realizes she's got a few hours until she's dead by Kevin's 24th split personality called, let's just say it now, guys, the Beast. Which is appropriate when we get to the end of the movie, and I'm going to get there right now as we speak. Dennis finds Dr. Fletcher at where he's hiding the girls, and they talk about the Beast and how he's born, or was just born, and Dr. Fletcher finds the bathroom and finds Claire in a closet while she's searching for the bathroom, and the Beast finds Dr. Fletcher and sprays her with a chemical on her face that I brought up earlier, and later on he kills her and stabs her in the neck, anaconda style. Meanwhile, Casey finds a file as she briefly gets out of Kevin's 23 identities before the Beast, and the Beast arrives home and eats the flesh out of Claire and Marcia. And Casey gets a shotgun and escapes and traps herself behind a cage and shoots the Beast, but she does get a hit, and we get a great image of the Beast pulling on the bars on the cage and trying to get it in to eat Casey, and runs out, as like I already said, about a bullet, and Casey is stuck in the cage overnight until someone finds her in the cage and gets her out to an ambulance, and we find out she was held captive at a zoo. Which, kind of a random, but I do like how all this is going. And the last scene, we see David Dunn, returned by Bruce Willis, drinking coffee and watching the news about it, and how he was called the Prode? Something like that. I'll talk more about that next week. And a lady says somebody 15 years ago in the same situation gets a funny name too, and David says Mr. Glass, which was such a great but random scene setting up for next week's movie, and I'm going to talk about it next week, and I'm looking forward to it. Let's get into this rating. I'll give this movie a 8.1 out of 10. This may be M. Night's best film yet to date, and James McAvoy should have gotten an Oscar nomination for this performance. He's that good. The flashback should have been in the editing room floor. Otherwise, it would have been a tighter movie. But they say The Visit was M. Night's comeback. No, that's wrong. Start over, guys. It's this movie. And great choices by the actors, and I'm very much looking forward to Glass next week. I will join you guys next week with Glass. And until next time, Swing away, Merrill. Swing away.